Hello and welcome to our live stream for the month of May. My name is Matt Curry and I'm here with two of my KOURO associates. Guys, introduce yourselves.
Hi guys, welcome. It's Shane here.
Hi guys, welcome. It's Rodney here.
Awesome stuff. Really excited to be with you guys this evening. This is our first live stream that we're doing in person, no longer via Zoom. We've now moved out of a lockdown period and we're more all about in-person meetings and doing things in person. So yeah, really excited to be with everyone this evening. And you guys can have a chance to interact with us from a more social perspective. Now, if this is your first time joining our live stream, really a warm welcome to you. We try to do these as often as we can, and we usually pick a topic to discuss, and we really delve deep into exactly what that topic is about. Shane, what are we speaking about tonight?
Cool. So tonight we're actually going to talk about property flipping, something that we are exceptionally good at, if I might just say. So while we're cramped like sardines, we'll get into it and share all of our thoughts, and hopefully you guys have some questions for us and challenge us so that we can answer all of them for you. But super excited. What about you, Rodney?
Yeah, super excited on my side, Shane. Property flipping is what we do best. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Awesome
stuff, guys. Really excited to talk to you guys about our experience in property flipping. Now, when it comes to property flipping, like Shane says, we're pretty good at it, and we've been doing it for about 4 years here at KOURO Property Group, and it's something that we really enjoy. And we're really excited to chat to you guys about our experiences and essentially what that is all about. Now, some of you might be new to the property game. You might have heard of what property flipping is or house flipping is, and you're not quite sure 100% what it's all about. Shane, for those people that maybe have a very basic understanding of what property flipping is, do you maybe want to give us an idea in layman's terms of what it actually is to flip a house?
Yeah, so really the basics is, a lot of you might have seen some HGTV or anything overseas. They're quite popular with it. But generally what you're doing is you're going to take a property that is quite distressed in some way. So there's different levels of distress that you might find on a particular property. Either something that is undervalued, maybe just pure land that you can develop on. It may be a property that is in distress, as in it's run down, it hasn't been maintained, so the seller needs to actually offload it at a lower price, or for some reason that person is distressed in a personal capacity and you can look to buy that property at a discounted rate, take it on, renovate or flip the property without doing any renovations, and we'll go through that later tonight. But ideally you want to be able to add value to that property and then flip it on for a good profit.
Yeah, I think Shane, you hit the nail spot on that one. It's just about finding the right property at the right value. Perhaps it's a distressed property that has potential to be renovated and later on then sold at a profit in that market.
100%, guys. Thank you so much for your insights there. I hope you guys at home have now got a better understanding of what property flipping is all about. Guys, just a reminder that this is an interactive presentation, so please feel free to drop any comments or any questions you might have or any suggestions. Maybe you don't like the way that we do things, please tell us, or perhaps maybe you're our biggest fan. Whatever your feedback or questions are, please feel free to drop them in the comment section. I see Mzwake has already greeted us. How's it, Mzwake? Hope you're doing well. Glad to have you on this on this presentation tonight. And yeah, we're also happy to be in the same room. It's really fun, and it definitely does feel a lot more social. So yeah, guys, get your questions to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. And yeah, excuse any mistakes we might make. It is our first time doing this. As you can see, I'm struggling a bit controlling the screen, but yeah, I think you guys get the gist of
We're just revealing what's to come.
Of what's happening here. Yeah. Okay, so we know what a property flip is, and we kind of understand what it's all about, but how do we actually go about it? I mean, cool, we understand that we have to buy a house below market value. We have to, fix that property up, and then we need to sell it again. That's essentially what a flip is. Shane, maybe explain to people, why would we be able to buy a property below market value? What gives us the right to actually buy a property below market value? How dare we? What reasons do people or do house flippers look for to buy a house under market value?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, a lot of it has to come down to what the present value is of that particular property. And in some cases, the market value of the property based on the condition is at a lower rate that the market is willing to pay if that property was in a good condition. So that's one of the ways in which it gives us the right, as you say, Matt. Second thing is, people will be distressed in such a way, say they're getting a divorce, person has passed on, inheritance, they don't really want the property, they need to get rid of the property. We've dealt with cases where a house is burnt down. Is that something we'll look at? Of course we'll look at it. There's many situations where vagrants have come in, stolen everything. We come in and we buy those typical properties, and we can see that gem that is hidden behind those cracked walls, and that's what we look for.
Yeah, I think you got that spot on again, Shane. It's all about finding that hidden gem and looking at these properties that one may look at and see a distressed property. We look at the property and see an opportunity to redevelop it, renovate it, and then of course flip it on the market after it's been renovated, and make a profit in doing so.
Yeah, no, spot on, Rodney. I think you've given a good basic overview there, so thank you for that. Now, I think most people understand now what the process is surrounding a house flip, but does it get more complex than that, Rodney? Are there different types of house flips that one could essentially undertake, or is it just always gut the place, put all new finishes in, and sell it for the biggest profit possible, or is there more of a science to it?
Yeah, there's more to the science of it. There's definitely different types of house flips that you can come across. Your basic house flip is a simple back-to-back house flip where you buy it at a relatively cheaper rate than in the market, and then you sell it for a little bit higher without doing any renovations to it, without putting a lot of capital in it. It's just a simple, quick flip, buy and sell.
Okay. Shane, do we get any other types of property flips, or has Rodney basically summed it up?
Yeah, so Rodney did very well summing it up there. Again, back to back, and then a quick flip, and then a major capital flip. And there's still various others that we haven't tackled in the presentation tonight, and that's something that if you guys are interested in, maybe you want to know what more you can actually do with a flip. But those are the three basic ones that we tend to look at. Anything else you'd add to that, Matt?
Yeah, I think just to sum it up, flipping a house can be done in a multitude of ways, and it's only really your own creativity that stops you from doing things a little bit differently. But essentially, the underlying thing that you have to remember is you need to add value to the property. So remember, when we flip houses, you generally make your profit when you buy the property and not necessarily when you sell it. So in other words, if you buy the property at the right price, you will be able to then offload it at the right price as well. So if there's a minimal amount of renovations to be put into that property, then you can probably pay a slightly higher price than if there was a property that essentially needed to be gutted and refitted from scratch. So you also got to have some sort of experience in terms of how much work do I need to put into this property in order to realize enough value for whoever's going to buy it at the end of the day.
And Matt, why do they say you make the money when you buy? Surely, it also makes sense you make the money when you sell. Well, explain the difference there. I know you tackled the point of view of you make money when you buy it a little bit lower and all of that, but why can't you make money when you sell? What's wrong there?
So remember, when you are buying the property, you're essentially building in what we call equity. So equity is basically the difference between what you buying the property for and what its eventual value will be once you've fixed that property up, or when you're going to resell that property. So if you buy the property too high, you shorten your margin of equity in the deal, and therefore you're giving yourself less room to make mistakes and less room to add value to the property in order to realize the price that you're looking for. Remember, if you do all of the steps correctly when it comes to flipping houses, essentially the house should sell itself.
And I think I'd just add to that, and when you sell the property, there's only so high that you can sell it for in that particular market. So what I mean is, if you renovate the property, you buy it a little bit too high, and like Matt said, you don't have enough fat on that or equity in that deal. When you sell it for, let's say the market value in that area is 1.5, if you're trying to push the price and sell it at 2.5 million, even though it might be the best house in that area, it just may not sell, or someone will only be willing to pay a fraction over 1.5. So you'll never make your money back. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you do your numbers correctly.
Yeah, I think that's very important, Shane. Before you get into the deal, you need to ensure that you do your due diligence, do your background checks on the property, and ensure that you do your market research as well. I'd say start with the end price that in mind that you want to sell the property for. Ensure that it's market related for what the houses in the area are selling for. Then based on that, you kind of have an idea of what to budget for renovations should you want to do a capital flip, for example.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for that, Rodney. Spot on. For those of you that are just joining in now, welcome to our live stream. Tonight we're talking all about property flipping and house flipping. So if you guys have any questions or any comments, please feel free to put them into the comments section below. I see you have a couple more comments coming through from Johnson and Jeannie. Thank you guys so much for your questions. Let's maybe take one of the questions now. It is actually a question from Johnson, and he wants to know, how long does it usually take to flip a property? Shane, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So I think really what it depends on is the type of property. As we've said before, there's really three. There's the back-to-back, you've got the quick flip, and the capital flip. Those are three of the easiest ones to understand. Typically, your back-to-back, because you're not doing any renovations and stuff, that'll generally be based on just selling the property as is, and that'll vary based on how long it'll need to be on the market. So if you anticipate the property might be 3 months on the market or a month, we typically would sell our properties, in 2 weeks, Matt? So it's way above the average, but that's how we would look at our numbers. So we might take it at 1 to 2 months, and we'll count the numbers for that, but then generally look, say, between 2 and 4 months to actually transfer that property. Now, if you look at any of the other ones, the quick flip, which is a smaller percentage of renovation, you might add an extra month on for renovations. And if it's a large flip, depending on how big that flip is, add an extra month or two for the renovations, and then the selling process, and then the transfer process. I hope that answers your question, Johnson.
Yeah, well, very well put, Shane. Thank you for that. I see there are more questions coming through, and we'll get to them during the course of the presentation, so please do keep them coming. We won't leave any stone unturned. I think when we were speaking earlier, we're talking about understanding the market and how important it is to be able to, for example, not sell a property for too high of a price, because then you could be in trouble. How do we go about understanding the market, Rodney? What sort of tactics can we employ to make sure that we know who we're selling to?
Yeah. So with us, for example, at KOURO, Matt, we have our internal sales team, dedicated people in the team that actually go about and conduct this extensive market research. They get a lot of agents on board to do valuations of the properties, rate the property as accordingly based on their different opinions. We'll also go through aspects such as doing a Lightstone report and extracting those information on the market from those reports. So there's a lot of reports as such which we will then extract in order to conduct our valuation and market research.
Yeah, no, brilliant, Rodney. And I think just to touch on what you've said, a lot of this information that you're discussing, you can actually get it for free most of the time. That's one of the beauties of real estate, is that a lot of the time anybody can check the values of properties and what they're selling for, not just in your suburb, but even in your street. This is public information. Again, you can go online and see what properties are listed for, what sort of prices are they being marketed at, who's going to be your competition when you try and sell that property again. So all of this stuff is not very difficult to access. If you just give it some thought, you can actually get quite a bit of information out of not having to pay any money for any of the results of that research. Let's maybe talk a little bit about the pros and cons of property flipping. I mean, I think house flipping can sometimes be a very glamorized topic. It can be something that people might see people in America doing, and they're making all of this money, and wow, it's like living the dream. But surely there's got to be some downsides to house flipping, Shane. I mean, you can't tell me it's all sunshine and rainbows.
No, it's definitely not. So you want me to start with the pros or the cons here?
I always like to start off with the bad news first.
The bad news. Oh man, don't get into it. Don't. No. So really, if you plan everything right, if you get everything right, your chances of success are way, way, way higher than anything else. And that's the big thing, is making sure that you run the numbers. Like Rodney said, the more data you actually have, the better of an outcome. And adding to Matt's story there is, things like speaking to the local agents in the area. That's really free stuff that agents are willing to come on board, and they want to assist you, because that's also potential work for them. So there's a lot of opportunity for you there. The other biggest thing that we often find is your renovation costs. So those are big things that really can cause the project to really go south.
Yeah, I think, especially when you speak about renovation costs, the cons to that would definitely be unexpected costs that will come about. Perhaps the prices of the building materials have increased. Perhaps we didn't budget accordingly for demolition and rubble removal. All these little factors that can come about and impact your budget at the end of the day.
Yeah, sometimes it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So you've got to be wary of these things, and you've got to stay on the ball all the time, and you can't just run your numbers once and it looks like a successful project from the beginning. You have to actually continually monitor what you are doing and make sure you are looking out for these red flags that could potentially be a pitfall in your property flip journey. I see that there's another question from Mzwakhe. Thanks for your question, Mzwakhe. I think this also ties into Jeannie's comment. So firstly, Mzwakhe says, how do I get the numbers right first time buying a distressed property? And I see Jeannie also left a comment saying that having a percentage of extra funds, the value that you bought the property for, you can put that into the reno budget to play it safe. So in other words, perhaps building in a contingency is one way to essentially make sure you run the numbers right the first time. So I think what Jeannie's trying to say, and it ties into Mzwakhe's question, is that one of the good habits you can have when running the numbers is to actually build in a contingency. So for unforeseen items, things that you haven't budgeted or planned for, having a percentage of that stashed aside for a rainy day, and when things go a little bit south, perhaps there's an unexpected construction element, or perhaps you hold the property an extra month than you plan to, and now you've got extra expenses. Having a little bit of a contingency in place really goes a long way to mitigating a risk. Shane, what else can Mzwakhe do to run the numbers right the first time? Do you have any other tips for him?
So I definitely say one way to really make sure that you do get it right is bring on a partner. That's something that we did for our first deal as well. Someone who gave us high level guidance. We were also mentored. So things like that can really, really help, because then you have someone who's got some experience in the industry. The second thing I do is you get multiple quotes, and you always do your checks and balances. If someone says it's 100 Rand, you go and you compare with someone else, or you ask a question with someone else and say, is it that? What am I to be expecting here? Get inspectors in. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting an inspector in, even if you pay a little bit for that inspector. That person might foresee something that you never saw. And then, as you said, Matt, just add in a contingency. And if you're new to the game, I would even price into your deal 20% contingency on your renovation budget. And then as you go further down in the industry, you can reduce it to 10, 5, whatever it may be. But it depends on at what level you are and how much risk you're willing to take.
Brilliant stuff, Shane. Really appreciate your advice and insight there, and I really hope that helps Mzwakhe. So when you're running the numbers on your next flip, hopefully you'll remember Shane's wise words. Moving on from that, I think that it kind of ties in with what we've spoken about. But often there's these hidden holding costs that house flippers forget about, and like you say, sometimes it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I know in the first few flips that we did, there were many costs that we didn't actually think about. Obviously, you think about the obvious ones. You think about your renovations. How much are my renovations going to cost me? If I'm taking a bond out on the property, how much is my bond installment going to be? How much are the transfer costs? Those are pretty obvious things. But there's sometimes small hidden things that if you don't watch them and you aren't aware of them, they can add up pretty quickly. Rodney, do you maybe want to give some insight to the viewers on what some of those can be?
Yeah, some of the hidden costs, I think one important factor to consider is time. The longer you hold onto a property, the longer you're going to be paying fees for rates and taxes, insurance, etc. So especially if you're doing a property flip, your goal should be to flip that property as soon as possible. So when you are budgeting, don't forget to factor in time into that budget and the costs associated with the bond installments, the insurance, rates, taxes, etc.
100%. Thanks for that, Rodney. Time is of the essence. Time is the one resource we can't get more of. So when you start to run out of time, it can become a big problem. Shane, what else could potentially be a big holding cost that people essentially forget about?
I think a lot of people, they see, like you said, Matt, the high level numbers, renovation, certain holding costs, even the ones that you mentioned, Rodney. Some people remember to put those in, but they don't necessarily factor in things like, okay, and it sounds silly, the accounting fees, your bank fees, administration fees, all of these various fees that need to be put onto there. And also you need to consider what your time is worth. If you spent every day for 4 weeks going to that property and spending hours and hours, because you only planned it to be a 2-week renovation, and then something went wrong, so you went to the property an extra 4 weeks. How much is your time worth? You need to factor that in, and there's so many other running costs that you need to consider as well. I mean, do you have a pool? What's the maintenance on that pool? You have to keep that place tidy. If even you've sold the property, right? It's no longer occupied by someone, or is it? Do you have to think of putting a caretaker in place so people don't vandalize your property? What about the case of keeping it constantly clean? The garden, I mean, sometimes, especially with all the rainy season that we've had this past year, the grass just grows like crazy.
It's been a lot of rain.
So you need to manage these things, and a lot of people don't factor that in. Is what happens after I've sold, even during the transfer period. People just think, well, it's over. But you can't hand over a property with super long grass to your buyer.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would go to the shop and buy a product that was dirty and stained and dented. So why should you hand over a property where the grass hasn't been cut, the
Yeah.
pool's green, and these are very important things that we don't think about. So, and I like the fact that you touched on security, Shane. I think that's such a big thing, especially in South Africa. Unfortunately, no matter where you live, even if you live in an affluent suburb, there's always a risk of crime, and you don't really want to be leaving your properties unattended. So please, guys, rather get someone to look after the property when it's vacant, especially after you've done renovations, because you've put money into the ground, literally, and that can be essentially wiped out in one foul swoop of a criminal getting a legal occupation of your property. So yeah, guys, just be aware of that, and make sure that you keep these things in mind.
And a funny example of that, I mean, we went to the shops and we even bought nice, awesome, beautiful looking shrubs, and we literally placed it outside on the verge to say, okay, listen, this is where we want to place them. We walked inside to go tell people, listen, come out, have a look where we placed these perfect little shrubs. We got back out, they were stolen. Like, I don't know how, but someone just picked them up and walked away with them.
Literally in 2 minutes of us putting it there. And that was our first ever flip.
Yeah.
And we never made that mistake again. So yeah, guys, again, this is South Africa. You've got to be aware. Don't take chances. It seems like he's got another question. He wants to know, how can we minimize the number of months it takes for a transfer to happen? How can we expedite the process, and would you advise to do so? Rodney, can you think of any ways that we can possibly reduce the transfer period time? I think what a lot of people complain about in South Africa is that the process is very slow and it can take months and months and sometimes even years.
Yeah.
Any tips for Mzwakhe?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to the transfer process specifically, and minimizing the time spent there, it's always wise to have a good transfer attorney, because essentially you, as the seller of the property, now you get to choose your own transfer attorneys. So choose someone you're familiar with, someone is going to be efficient, someone is going to go the extra mile for you. That will significantly help to reduce the time spent in that transaction.
No, good point, Rodney. And I think also, there's certain elements that you can't control in the transfer process. Unfortunately, you're reliant on state entities such as the deeds office and the local council, and there's only so much that you can do. But what you can do, try and do it well. So remember, when you transfer a property, there's going to be documentation that your transferring attorney is going to require from you. Things like your basic FICA documents, or maybe financial information, or whatever the case is. So try and have that stuff on hand so that you can immediately submit it to the transferring attorney instead of them waiting days or weeks for that. Try and have it already up front so that you can just merely provide it to them and they can then expedite the process there. So that's something that you're fully in control of, and providing that can save you days and possibly even weeks. Shane, is anything maybe on the construction side that one could do, something that maybe comes to mind for me, and maybe I'll have a sub question to Mzwakhe here, but would you, if you're renovating a property, would you wait until the property is perhaps fully completed before you maybe market it, or would you do it a bit differently?
Yeah, so typically in the past, what we've done, and we've found it actually works exceptionally well, is you want to get the property sold as quickly as possible. And part of that challenge is renovations, and renovations can drag on, and there's always those snag items that always take forever, and you never quite get it as perfect as you want. However, if you could manage to complete the project to say 90%, right? It's generally your 10% at the end that actually takes a lot of time. But if you can complete it to that 90% portion, so you've got the kitchen in, maybe you don't necessarily have the tap in or the basin in, you don't have the shower doors in, but you've got 90% of the essence of what the property will look like in there. Your main things like your painting, your lighting, and some of your bigger fixtures, say your toilet, whatever, are in. From there, you can actually put the property out on the market people will come through, view the property, and if they like it there and then, they're willing to put in an offer, or they'll say, listen, I'll come back next weekend, the weekend after, when it is complete, and then put in an offer. But at least what you're doing is you're bringing forward that sales process a week or 2 weeks prior, and people have a good idea. And then also, as the seller now of the property, if you're going to be wasting time chasing a certain lead, because this person, if they're interested, they'll truly be interested if it's 90% complete, and they'll be able to see your final potential property.
100%, Shane. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, guys, don't wait too long before putting the property on the market. You can save time. Sometimes you can even do what we call a back-to-back or a simultaneous transfer. Now, some of you might be asking what that is. Rodney, do you maybe want to shed some light on that for our newbie viewers?
Sure. Yeah, basically what that means in a simultaneous transfer is that if you are going out to look for a property to flip, you find a property to flip, you enter into that agreement of sale with that seller. You'll then essentially do the renovation works, and in that process of that transfer going through from the initial seller to yourself, you will then find an end buyer in that process. So that also helps to minimize the time spent over the entire transaction.
So how do we go about doing the renovations, Rodney, before the property is transferred to us? How do you do something like that? I mean, It's not my property. What right do I have to knock out the walls now?
So you obviously need the permission from the actual initial sellers of the property. You'll generally take occupation of the property in order to do so. So you'll need to pay them an occupational rent for that time period in which you're then at the property doing those renovation works. It's all about coming to an understanding with the initial seller of the property. They need to understand what your intentions are of the property, as well as that at the end of the day, they are going to be receiving their proceeds from that sale.
Wow. I'm lucky. I don't know if that's not a pro tip, then I don't know what is, hey? So you can literally, like, half the time flipping your next house by just looking for early occupation. Yes, you might have to pay a bit extra to take early occupation, but if you weigh up your other costs, if you wait till transfers, such as bond registration costs, bond cancellation costs when you sell the property, you're actually saving a hell of a lot more than paying a small occupational rent every month. So that's a nice pro tip there from Rodney. Thanks, Rodney. I see there's a question from another question from Jeannie. Thank you, Jeannie. We appreciate your questions. Just a reminder, guys, if you do have questions, please do send them through to us. We'll gladly answer them. Jeannie wants to know, what are the high demand, lowest cost items that need to be renovated that help to sell a property? So in other words, what sort of finishes or what sort of renovation techniques can be used to add the most value to a property? Shane, this question's right up your alley. Tell us what it is.
So I think, the biggest thing is obviously understand your market and the area that you're in. Obviously, there's no point putting, Formica tops, your wooden tops with some vinyl over in a place like Sandton. It just won't sell, right? But overall, across the board, the biggest return on investment that you're going to get based on the stuff that you're going to end up doing is, for one, is going to be your painting. Painting is something that will change a room instantly. I'd look at that. I'd look at, say, modern lighting. These aren't necessarily big costs, but they do make a huge impact on the final cost of the place, especially if you're looking for that return on investment. Putting in as little as possible, but getting the highest return. Besides that, your fittings. So look to update your fittings and make sure that they are as modern as possible, right? Beyond that, what can you think? Simple things, changing your door handle. There's some door handles that for an extra 100 Rand, you can have something that looks completely modern and brand new versus leaving them as is. But yeah, biggest one I definitely say is your painting, your lighting, your sanitary fittings, and then lastly, simple things like door handles, that type of thing. People tend to notice the small things.
No, thanks for that, Shane. Apologies for our technical difficulties there. Unfortunately, you have a very unprofessional director in myself directing this live stream tonight. So yeah, I'm by no means proficient at this. So I do apologize,
Yeah,
guys. We'll
let us know
try.
if you got everything.
Yeah. If you, I hope you heard what Shane had to say there. But we will try get the slides back onto the screen as soon as possible, and you guys can continue to keep sending your questions through, and we will of course answer them. I think Jeannie did hear what you had to say, Shane, and she wants to know: is it actually necessary to reno kitchen and bathrooms? I mean, you hear people say all the time, kitchens and bathrooms, kitchens and bathrooms. That's what sell houses. Is it true, or is there another answer you can give, Jeannie?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the market as well. So a quick hop on Property 24 or private property, whatever, will give you a good idea of what is in the area and what are they selling. If everyone else in your area, for the price point you're looking to sell, has a renovated bathroom and a modern kitchen, then that may be something that you'll most likely need to do. But there is, again, simple and cost-effective ways of doing it. Something as simple as painting the kitchen cupboards with the right paint. You can get a good new finish, right? And that doesn't mean replacing all of the kitchenware. Same as changing the countertops from your Formica to a quartz countertop is something that's super easy to do, but just changes the whole look completely. Painting the tiles in the bathroom from an old looking tile to something that's new and modern. And like I said, just a simple change of a tap fitting adds a lot of value to some people. But in essence, you don't have to do anything with the bathrooms. It really depends. What is the market looking for?
Yeah, definitely, Shane. At the end of the day, market research is so important that when it comes to flipping, it's one of the key aspects. So yeah, just do your market research. Look at what the market wants, and that'll tell you whether or not you should do an extensive kitchen renovation or perhaps a minor kitchen
Yeah,
renovation.
no, 100%. So overall, very, very good question, and I'm sure that helped out a lot of people that were thinking potentially of the same question. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other renovation tips or questions that people may have there. Um, yeah, I think it was a good one.
100%, guys. Thank you so much for that. We have actually got our slides back on the screen. Apologies for that, guys. But we are busy taking your questions. So if you do have further questions for us, then please do send them through, and we'll gladly answer them. I think maybe for a lot of people viewing tonight, they obviously have a good idea of what a house flip is, what some of the strategies are that they can implement. Um, what pros and cons should they try and keep in mind when attempting a house flip. And now we've also given them some good pro tips on how to actually implement it. But a lot of you might be thinking, I want to know some real life examples. I want to see in actual real life a flip that's perhaps coming up. We've got one that's actually on the cards in Kensington South in the east of Joburg, known as Project Northumberland. Rodney, any insights you can give our viewers on what we may do on that flip? Is this a nice condition property that we're buying? Was it distressed? What do you have to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly decent property. It's not too distressed. It's not too distressed as some we've come across, but I'd say it's a mid-range capital intensive flip that we're looking at doing. So yeah, definitely the viewers back home can follow our various social media pages, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Keep an eye out for our property flips and the progressions that we then post for these flips on a weekly basis. So once we start the project, we will see that on a weekly basis, we'll be posting updates and letting you guys know on the progress.
Thanks for that, Rodney. Thanks for that. Yeah, very excited for Project Northumberland. Can't wait to take South Kensington by storm. Rodney, are we doing something similar in Ivy Road in Norwood, or is it going to be a bit different? Well, what's the plan there? What are the design team looking at doing?
Yeah, Project Norwood. or Ivy, sorry, my bad, Project Ivy. It is a literal quick flip. It's get in, get out. And for example, this is where we are going to tackle the kitchens and bathrooms and then a repaint. That's pretty much as simple as it's going to get. We are looking for investors to come on board. So if you are an investor and maybe you want to even learn how the project is done, how we go from inception to the end, it is definitely worthwhile coming onto this one. And it's a good starting project as well for a lot of people. So you get to see, how we look at it, why we chose the route to go. And it's interesting in the market there, a lot of the houses are your 3 bedroom, two bedroom, 2 bathrooms, but a lot of them call for a main ensuite. So, do we put a main ensuite on? Do we not put a main ensuite? And that's how you really determine your value.
100%, Shane. Thanks for that insight. Another exciting project, a little bit different to Project Northumberland, but again, still falls under one of our strategies that we implement. Rodney, what's happening at Blanca Avenue? Is that going to be a flip now? I thought we were multi-letting that property.
Yeah, so actually a change of strategy there, Matt. Initially, we planned to do it as our multi-let, but in the change of internal strategy, we've determined that it may be just a bit better to do it as a quick flip, a back-to-back flip as such. So essentially, once the sale goes through, we'll do a quick flip, and basically it's not going to be a long project. It's just going to be a simple back-to-back.
Brilliant. I like that we've given 3 examples here where we flipping the houses, but we're doing it in different ways. We've got Project Northumberland, which is more of a capital flip. We've got Project Ivy, which is more of a quick flip, and then we've got Project Blanca, which is essentially what we call a back-to-back, where we're just selling the property as is. So I think it's a good insight for our viewers to see the different types of strategies that we implement, and it's not just theory, it is something that we actually do in practice. Another question coming through from Ayanda. Thanks for your question, Ayanda. Hi guys, my question is around financing a property. What options are there for financing property flips, especially when you want to do flips regularly? So Ayanda, I'll take this question. So there are multiple ways to go about financing a house flip, and sometimes you can even employ multiple ways in doing it on the very same house flip. So when it comes to the actual purchasing of the property, let's say, for example, you're buying a property for R1 million. Okay, you could do it the traditional way, where you go to a bank and you apply for a bond, and they grant you a bond on that property, and you essentially can buy that property, fix it up, and sell it. That's probably the most easiest and traditional way to do it. Another way of doing it, and it's something that we discussed earlier, would be to essentially get a property under contract. So you sign what we call an OTP, or an agreement of sale. And in that agreement of sale, that, like Rodney touched on earlier, you agree for the seller to give you early occupation of the property. So in other words, you take occupation of the property before it essentially transfers to you. And in that early occupation period, so while you're waiting for the period for the property to transfer from the seller's name to your name, you can essentially get going with your renovations. And what you can actually do is you can actually on-sell that property. So essentially sell that property on to the next buyer before it's even transferred to you. So that's a simultaneous transfer that we touched on. So essentially the money that the end buyer, the person at the very end who's going to be living in the house or buying the house, essentially the monies that they are using to buy the property from you, you can use that money to fund the initial purchase of the property that you are purchasing from the original seller. So that's what we call a simultaneous transfer. So that's a really nice way of flipping houses without actually having to put down the money for the purchase price. Another thing that you can do is when it actually comes to funding your flip. So, for example, coming up with the money for renovations and things like that, there's multiple ways that you can go about raising money in that regard. Shane, any ideas on how we would do that?
Yeah, so as we do ourselves, we reach out to other investors. So for capital, another way that investors can also get involved is actually providing surety. So obviously the surety is, there's a certain amount of bonds that one can take out on their own name. So we would look to investors to say, listen, we'll come onto the property, we'll essentially sign some surety. Banks are then happy. We move forward with the renovation. And then once we sell that particular property, then that particular person who supplied that surety will get a percentage cut of that particular profit. Other ways is if you obviously provide up the equity, you get then a percentage of that money over a certain duration. So like 20% per annum. That is something that we would typically do with some of our really, really good investors.
Perfect stuff. Perfect stuff. Thank you for that insight, Shane. Guys, I really hope that a lot of these tips will help you guys in doing your next house flip. If there are more questions, then you still have a couple of minutes to get them in before we conclude. So while we're waiting for you guys to think of your final questions, we'll just chat to you quickly about our equity investment opportunity. So remember, guys, here at KOURO Property Group, you can invest in the various deals that we're doing. We call it project-specific investing. So if you like a particular project that we're going to be taking on, you actually have the opportunity to invest in that project. And you can invest anywhere from 20,000 Rand upwards, looking at returns of between 15 and 20% per annum. If 20,000 Rand is a bit of a step up for you and you need a bit more time to save, you can get involved in our equity investment scheme. So essentially you can buy shares within KOURO Property Group for less than the cost of a cup of coffee, and you can essentially benefit from the long-term growth and success of the company as a whole, whilst we try and flip as many houses as we can across the nation. So if you want more information on that, please send through your details via social media, or you can visit our website and get more information there. I see there's a question that's come through from Lindo. Lindo, nice to hear from you. One of our former guests on our live stream. Always good to hear from you, Lindo. Lindo wants to know, how many investors do you partner with in a single flip? Shane, do we have a limit on how many investors we can partner with, or is it an exclusive club, or how does it work?
Yeah, so you have to get the exclusive badge. No, I'm kidding you. So really we're looking for as many investors as possible. Obviously, the fewer, the less admin for us, but the more, the actual merrier, because it means that we give countless more people the opportunity to grow their capital. So really from 20,000 Rand up to the full project value, we'll take investors on. And yeah, the full documentation can actually be found online. Go onto the website, say you want to invest, and there's prompts that can help you through that process. But yeah, there's no real answer to that besides the more the merrier.
Yeah, I think to add to that, Shane, it's definitely more so dependent on the actual budget for the project itself. So if you go to our website, you'll see there's a little slider that'll tell you how much of the project has been funded to date. So that'll tell you whether or not there's still room to invest in that project. So yeah, check it out, guys. Go to the website and have a look.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks for that, Rodney. Yeah, everything can be found on our website, guys. So yeah, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. It really has been a lot of fun. Remember that all our live streams are recorded. You can locate them on our Facebook page. So if you really enjoyed tonight's stream and you want to hear about the other topics that we discussed previously, you can go back into the archives and have a listen or have a watch and see all the different things that we've talked about. Or if you really loved what we discussed tonight, you can go and watch this again. If you think there are friends or family that might be interested in what we have to say, then please share the links with them. All they need to do is just like the KOURO Property Group page, and they'll be able to access all of our content from there. So from myself, Matt Curry, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. It was really, really fun and interactive, and wishing you all a blessed evening.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And Ms. Waka, I saw you had a question there. If you do feel like having a view of any of our properties, just pop us an email and we'll be happy to assist you there. But otherwise, thank you very much, and thanks for the interactive session this evening. See you guys soon. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Good night.